The waiter at Bellini's Steakhouse wore that polished, neutral smile that tells you he's watched people fall apart over dessert and still had to offer the wine list like nothing happened. He had probably heard every kind of argument: money, jealousy, family grudges, business betrayals, served up with a side of truffle fries. I didn't blame him for thinking he'd seen it all. He was wrong. "Another bottle of the Cabernet," Lucas Crowley said, loud enough for the corner booths to turn their heads. He didn't glance at the menu, didn't ask if anybody else wanted something different. He just announced it, like his voice alone could order the room into being impressed. He wore a navy suit that probably cost more than my truck. The kind of suit you don't bend your elbows in because it isn't meant for work, it's meant for being seen. My wife, Sienna, laughed like he'd told the funniest thing in the world. Not a polite laugh, not a quick, social smile. A real, bouncing laugh that made her tilt her head back and let her hair spill down her shoulders in a way I hadn't seen in a while. She was 35, but in that moment she looked 16, like she'd snuck into a club and was thrilled she hadn't been caught. She rested her manicured hand on Lucas's forearm. Casual, familiar, like they'd done it 100 times. Her fingers traced a lazy circle on his cufflinks, as if she were absent-mindedly petting some expensive animal. I sat across from them with a whiskey I wasn't enjoying, doing math I didn't want to do. Because that's what you do when you're the one paying for the table. You look at every extra bottle and every "we should try this too" appetizer like it comes out of your ribcage. You pretend it doesn't matter, but your mind counts anyway. That's what years of stretching a paycheck does to you. It teaches you that every indulgence is a choice, and every choice has a bill at the end. Lucas leaned back, comfortable in a way that didn't belong to this table. The kind of comfortable you get when people keep telling you yes, when nobody corrects you, when your title is a shield people don't dare scratch. "You know what I told Sienna yesterday?" he said, smiling. His voice had that executive confidence that comes from never being interrupted mid-sentence. There was a pause, just long enough to make sure the question landed on everyone at the table. "What's that?" Sienna asked, already grinning. Eileen, Sienna's best friend, lifted her glass halfway, then seemed to change her mind and slowly set it back down. I could see the warning in her eyes, like she knew the road we were about to drive down. Lucas didn't notice, or maybe he noticed and enjoyed it. I said, "Sienna, you need to train your husband better." He chuckled at his own line, like it was a story he'd already rehearsed. A good woman deserves a man who knows how to keep her happy. The words weren't even shouted. That was what made them worse. How casually he said it. How natural it seemed on his tongue. Like he was giving advice about golf swings or quarterly targets. Silence settled on our table, thick and uninvited. Eileen's eyes widened, and she stared so hard at her napkin you'd think it was about to confess something. Her face did that slow, uncertain shift people make when they're trying to decide whether to laugh politely or pretend they didn't hear something. Sienna didn't hesitate. She laughed, bright, sharp, glittering. "Oh, Lucas is awful," she said, waving a hand as if dismissing him. But she was smiling too much. Her eyes were alive in a way that felt like a spotlight I hadn't agreed to stand under. "He says the most inappropriate things." Lucas lifted his glass like he was being toasted. "And you know what?" she went on, still laughing. "He's not wrong. Some men just don't know how to handle a real woman." Then she looked at me, not quickly, not by accident. She held my gaze just long enough to make sure I knew it was for me. I'm not a small man. I've hauled servers up stairwells and crawled under desks in homes where the carpet probably costs more than my entire wardrobe. I've wrestled with routers and attics in July. I've been elbow deep in machines that refuse to behave for anyone. I'm built for solving problems, not putting on a show. My name is Nate Wilder, and I repair computers for a living. I don't fit comfortably in places like Bellini's. Not because I'm intimidated by them, but because they aren't built for people like me. Places like this are for smooth voices and silent shoes, and men who can talk about value propositions without laughing at themselves. My hands are rough. Calluses, tiny scars, a faint line across my thumb from case fan that bit me last winter. I don't own a tailored suit. I own work jeans, a couple of decent shirts, and a jacket that smells faintly like solder no matter how many times I wash it. And I know when someone is trying to turn me into a joke. I set my glass down slowly. "That's quite a line," I said. I kept my voice level, even almost as funny as a CEO who thinks the company credit card is his personal pocket. Lucas's smile flickered, a fraction of a second, just enough to see it wasn't permanent. His eyebrows lifted. What's that supposed to mean? I shrugged. Nothing at all. Just conversation. The way you were making conversation. There was a beat where nobody breathed. Sienna's laugh died midair. Her cheeks turned red, not from wine, from something sharper. Embarrassment, maybe, or anger that I'd broken the script. Nate, she said, her voice low and warning. Sit down. I was already rising, napkin sliding off my lap. You're embarrassing yourself, she hissed. I looked at her. Really looked. No, sweetheart, I said. I'm embarrassing you. There's a difference. Lucas straightened in his seat, tried to recover the room the way men like him do, by pretending the room belongs to them in the first place. You're overreacting, he said lightly, as if this was a harmless bump in the night. Maybe, I replied. Or maybe I'm just tired of pretending I didn't hear what I heard. I didn't shout. I didn't slam anything. I didn't make a scene the way people expect men like me to make scenes. I just walked away. The dining room felt bigger when I stood. Lights warmer, air thicker. Every pair of eyes in that place tracked me like I was either brave or insane. Maybe both. Chairs scraped softly behind me as someone shifted to watch. I felt the waiter's practiced smile go still. I didn't look back. I pushed through the front doors and stepped into the cool night that smelled like valet exhaust and whetstone. My phone started buzzing before I hit the parking lot. I ignored it. I already knew who it was. I already knew what she'd say. Something about how I'd misunderstood, how it was just a joke, how I shouldn't be so sensitive, how I'd ruined the night. The thing about being underestimated for years is that you stop being surprised when it happens. But you do start planning. I got into my truck and shut the door. The restaurant's glow was still visible in my rearview mirror, a warm little jewel of money and manners and quiet cruelty. I stared at it for a long moment, because that dinner wasn't just a bad moment. It was a line, and once someone draws a line, you either step back, or you step over it and make sure they never forget what happens next. I didn't drive home, not right away. I circled the block once, mostly because my hand was shaking and I didn't trust myself to pull into traffic like a normal human being. Bellini's was still behind me, bright and smug, like a stage that had just spit me out. I could almost feel the eyes in that dining room clinging to my back, hungry for a second act. My phone buzzed again. Sienna. Then again. Lucas's name wasn't on the screen, but I could already hear his voice in my head, smooth, amused, sure of itself. A man who thinks he can say whatever he wants as long as he's paying for dessert. I muted the phone and drove toward the one place that never asked me to pretend. My shop sat in a low brick building wedged between an auto parts store and a payday loan place. The sign above the door said Wilder Tech and Repair, and a neon open buzzed faintly even though it was late. The front bay was dark, but I knew the backlight would be on, because Jonah was there. Jonah Price has been my best friend since we were kids on the South Side, back when steakhouse meant the discount meat aisle and your big night out was a burger you ate in the car, so nobody saw you counting coins. Jonah runs the auto side of the business. I handle the computers. We're different kinds of mechanics, but the same kind of stubborn. When I pushed through the rear door, he looked up from a transmission, housing like he felt me coming. Man, he said, wiping his hands on a rag. You look like you just walked out of a funeral. Maybe I did, I muttered. He waited. Jonah's one of those guys who doesn't pry first. He lets you spill when you're ready. I crossed the floor past stacked tires and tool chests, into the small back room we kept locked. It wasn't much, just a concrete box with a metal desk, shelf for parts, and the safe. The safe was the thing nobody noticed unless they already knew it was there. Most people assume a small business safe holds insurance papers or spare cash. Ours did hold some of that, but it also held the kind of truth you don't leave lying around. Jonah watched me pull the key ring from my pocket. Don't tell me the night finally came, he said. It came, I replied, and it didn't knock first. He followed me inside, shutting the door behind him. The air smelled faintly of old paper and machine oil. I crouched, spun the dial, and listened to the clicks like they were heartbeats. The door opened with a slow, heavy sigh. I reached in and pulled out a manila folder, thick enough to make Jonah whistle low. On the cover, in my own handwriting, 2 words stared back at me. Sienna's playbook. Jonah's eyebrows went up. You really kept calling it that? Felt honest, I said. I set it on the desk, then pulled out a small USB drive the size of a thumb joint. Plain black casing. No label. The kind you'd lose in couch cushions and never miss, unless you knew what was on it. Jonah leaned back against the wall with his arms folded. How long you been sitting on that? 3 years, I said. 3. Since the Tuesdays and Thursdays started. He didn't ask what I meant. He knew. When you've been married to an ambitious woman long enough, you learn the difference between working late and working late every week like clockwork. And when you grow up counting every dollar, you learn to notice when money starts moving in ways that don't make sense. I wasn't proud of what I'd done. I wasn't even sure I understood myself at first. But the first time Sienna came home smelling like hotel soap instead of office air, my gut shifted. The first time she told me I was reading into things while her eyes slid away from mine, my instincts woke up. So I paid attention, quietly. Over time, attention became records. I opened the folder and spread the contents across the desk like cards. Bank statements. Small withdrawals from our joint account. Nothing big enough to trigger a bank alert, but steady like a drip under a sink. Emails printed from a thread Sienna thought I couldn't access. Messages that didn't belong between colleagues. Photos from a company retreat last summer. Grainy, but undeniable. A shot of her on a dock at night, leaning into someone whose face I didn't need to see to know. Jonah stared, jaw working. Good grief, he said softly. She really... Yeah. He tapped a statement with his fingertip. This year. That's your money too. 6 months, I replied. That's how long she's been skimming. Took me a while to be sure. Jonah looked at me like he was trying to find the old Nate in my face. The guy who used to laugh things off, let stuff slide. The guy who believed if he just worked hard, life would stay fair. That dinner set you off? He asked. It didn't set me off, I said. It set me straight. I picked up the USB drive and turned it between my fingers. Tonight gave me something I was missing, I went on. A clean piece. Their voices. Their tone. The way they didn't even try to hide it. Jonah didn't speak. I felt my phone buzz again. I didn't need a look. Where are you? Sienna would be saying. We need to talk. Like talking was a magic eraser for what happened. I set the phone face down. Jonah glanced at it anyway and gave a slow, humorless smile. She's going to be tearing the house apart. Let her, I said. He nodded once. So what's the move? I put the folder back together, but left one thing out. A tiny recording device. No bigger than a matchbook. I'd carried it for months, waiting for the moment that would justify it. I slid it across the desk toward Jonah. Phase 1 starts tomorrow, I said. He picked it up, examined it, then looked at me. You're serious. I've never been more serious. Jonah's eyes narrowed, not with doubt, but with the kind of focus he gets when he's about to pull an engine apart and knows every bolt matters. You want to torch them? I want to make sure they can't stand back up the way they've been standing on me, I answered, without breaking a single law. A beat of silence passed. Then Jonah cracked his knuckles slowly, the way a man does when he's accepting work he doesn't plan to walk away from. All right, he said. Tell me what you need. I locked the folder and USB back into the safe, spun the dial shut, and sat on the edge of the desk. Tonight, I said, we don't do anything. Let them think the night ended with me storming out. And tomorrow, I replied, we start moving pieces. Jonah didn't smile, not really, but the corners of his mouth lifted in something close to satisfaction. About time, he said. I looked at the safe, at the folder inside, at the quiet weight of 3 years of watching, waiting, learning. Sienna thought I was the kind of man you could embarrass in public and smooth over later at home. Lucas thought I was background noise, an accessory to her life, a person who didn't matter. What neither of them understood was this. When someone spends years underestimating you, they are also giving you years to prepare. And I was done being their entertainment. Morning came with a silence that felt staged. When I walked into the kitchen, the coffee maker was unplugged. The cord lay coiled on the counter like a petty little trap. My favorite mug, white with the chipped rim I'd been meaning to replace for 2 years, sat in the sink with a faint red smear on the edge. Lipstick, not forgotten. Placed. The newspaper was still outside on the porch, half damp from the early mist. Sienna knew exactly which buttons to press when she wanted to punish me without starting a real fight. She'd been doing it for years. Small inconveniences disguised as accidents. A way of saying you don't get to disrupt my world without paying for it. I made coffee in a different mug. I didn't fix the machine. I didn't bring the paper in. I just took the quiet like a temperature check. Then I called in sick to the day's jobs. Not a lie. I was sick of being treated like furniture in my own marriage. My phone buzzed an hour later. Eileen Hart, are you okay? Last night was awkward. I stared at the message longer than I needed to. Eileen had been Sienna's best friend since college. One of those women who lived for gossip but wore a moral code over it, like that made her better than the stories she fed on. Loud laugh, quick opinions, always the first to check in after something messy happened, mostly because she wanted front row seats. But she was also the weak link in Sienna's armor. Eileen couldn't hold a secret if her life depended on it. She leaked things just to feel important, to feel included. I'd counted on that once or twice over the years. I typed back, I'm fine, just tired of being the entertainment. Her reply came instantly. Can we talk? I know things you should know. I didn't hesitate. Where? She sent an address across town, a coffee shop I'd never taken Sienna to in 12 years because it wasn't her kind of place. No outdoor seating, no polished wood, no baristas who called you sir. Just chipped tables, low music, and a steady smell of burnt espresso and baked dough. Perfect. When I got there, Eileen was already waiting near the back. She looked like she dressed for a job interview and then reconsidered halfway through. Her hands kept finding her wedding ring and twisting it. She lifted her head every time the door opened. When she saw me, her shoulders dropped with a kind of nervous relief. I slid into the chair across from her. You said you know things. She swallowed. I shouldn't be doing this. Then don't, I said. My voice was calm, almost bored. But if you're going to do it now. She let out something like a breath she'd been holding for months. It's been going on for 8 months, she blurted. I didn't move, didn't blink. I didn't give her the satisfaction of seeing the hit land. Not 3. I asked. She shook her head, eyes wide like she wished she could unsay it. 8. There's a funny thing about knowing the truth already. When someone confirms it, it still feels like fresh damage, like a bruise you keep pressing just to remind yourself it's real. How do you know? I said, because she tells me everything. Eileen replied, voice dropping. She calls me after they're together. She gives details I never wanted, like it's a joke, like she's proud of it. Her cheeks were red, some mix of embarrassment and guilt, maybe fear. She thinks you don't see it. Eileen went on. She thinks you're clueless. I looked down at my coffee. The surface was still, almost black, like looking into a well. What else? I asked. Eileen leaned forward, lowering her voice even though there was nobody near us. Lucas promised her a promotion. Senior VP of Strategic Growth. Corner office, big raise. She says it's finally her chance. Promises are cheap, I said. Not this one. She says it's real. But Eileen hesitated. But what? She has to be available for travel. A lot of it. Overnight trips. Client circuits. New markets. Eileen's eyes flicked up to mine, then away. And Lucas travels with her. I nodded slowly, letting her hear my patience. Go on. They've already gone on 3 trips together. She comes back talking about hotels and room service and how she finally feels seen. Eileen's voice tightened. She says he appreciates her, that he understands her ambition, that she's tired of a life that feels small. The words didn't hurt the way Lucas's jokes had hurt. They were worse, because they were honest. What about me? I asked quietly. Eileen's mouth pressed into a line. She says you don't get it, that you're content with mediocrity, that you hold her back without meaning to, that your world is tools and grease and keeping things running, and hers is bigger. I stared at her. She hurried on like she wanted to get through it before she lost her nerve. There's more. She's been taking pictures of your house, your financial files, business records. I felt my fingers tighten around the cup. She said she needs to know what she's entitled to when she files for divorce. Eileen added, when not if. Divorce, not a threat sprung in anger. Not a word thrown during a fight. A plan. Calm. Scheduled. Like ordering catering. She already met with a lawyer, Eileen said softly. Some downtown guy who specializes in high-conflict separations. She said he's going to make sure she walks away comfortable. I took a slow sip of coffee. It tasted like metal. Eileen reached across the table and touched my hand. I'm sorry, Nate. I should have told you earlier. Why now? I asked. She pulled her hand back like she'd been burned. Because last night was cruel, even for her. Because you didn't deserve that. And she hesitated again, then forced the words out. Because she's been saying things about me too. About my marriage, my body, my husband. Like she's keeping score on everyone's life. I didn't realize who she'd become. I looked at Eileen for a long moment. This wasn't bravery. Not really. It was self-preservation. She'd realized the storm was coming and wanted to be standing in the right place when it hit. That didn't make the information less useful. Thank you for telling me, I said. Her eyes searched mine. What are you going to do? What any reasonable person does when they realize their house is already on fire, I replied. I'm going to protect myself. After she left, I sat in my truck for a while, hands on the wheel, letting the words settle where they needed to settle. 8 months. A promotion tied to availability. Photos of my finances. A divorce lawyer waiting in the wings. Sienna wasn't just stepping out. She was building a new life with the old one already measured for demolition. I drove back to the shop. Jonah was in the front bay, half under a car, working like the world still made sense. He rolled out when he saw me. Well, he asked. Worse than I thought, I said. Better than I hoped. I told him everything. Eileen's confession, the promotion, the divorce plan, the photos. Jonah listened without interrupting. By the time I finished, his jaw was set hard. So she's not just cheating, he said finally. She's setting you up. Exactly, I replied. She thinks she's writing the ending. Jonah nodded once. Then we rewrite it. I looked down at my phone. Another missed call from Sienna. Another text I didn't open. Let her stew. Let her wonder why I wasn't rushing home to patch things up. Every move she'd made for 8 months had been quiet, calculated, and confident. Now it was my turn. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a strange kind of calm. Because the game she'd been playing had rules she never bothered to learn. And I'd been studying them for years. By the time I got back to the shop, the air felt heavy, like the day was holding its breath. Jonah was in the front bay, wiping his hands on a rag, watching me the way you watch a storm roll in from a distance. So what now, he asked. I didn't answer right away. I pulled out my phone, opened the audio file from Bellini's, and set on the desk between us. Lucas's voice came through clean. So did Sienna's laugh. The room got colder just listening to it. Jonah exhaled slow. That's rough. It's necessary, I said. He leaned his hip against the table. You going straight to them? No, I shook my head. That's what they expect. A loud husband, a public scene. Something they can call jealousy and sweep under the rug. Jonah studied me. So what's the move? Phase 1, I said. We let their own world turn on them. I opened a note on my phone. 5 names were already there. I've been watching the shape of Sienna's office life for years without meaning to. Once you notice a pattern, you can't unsee it. 5 people. Jonah said, 5 specific people. I read the list out loud. Marissa Cole in HR. She lives for policy and risk. If she smells a workplace problem, she chases it. Tanya Brooks in accounting. She sees every expense report. She hates executives who treat company money like a private wallet. Owen Park in IT security. He monitors internal email and device use. He's strict and he's proud of it. Nora Ellis in marketing. Passed over for promotion 3 times. She's been waiting for proof that the game is crooked. Caleb Reed in legal. He worries about liability like it's a shadow. Give him a spark, and he calls a fire drill. Jonah whistled once low. You've really mapped this out. You don't get humiliated in public and walk away without checking the exits, I said. I pulled my laptop closer, started drafting. Each of them gets the audio file, I explained, but I don't send it the same way. Jonah watched the screen as I worked. To HR, I frame it as a professional boundary issue. An executive making personal comments, possible favoritism. That puts her in investigation mode. To accounting, I nudge her toward expenses. Travel charges, dinners labeled as business. That puts her in audit mode. To IT, I mentioned concerns about company systems being used for private communication. That puts him in monitoring mode. To marketing, I hint that promotions might not be based on merit. That puts her in gossip and justice mode. To legal, I point at conflict of interest and hostile environment risk. That puts him in emergency mode. 5 different angles. One truth. By the time I finished, every email looked like it came from a different person with a different worry. But all of them led to the same conclusion. Jonah read over my shoulder and shook his head. You're not sending this to everyone. Not now, I said. If I blast the whole building, it looks like revenge. They'll rally. They'll spin it. 5 is quieter. 5 spreads faster. I scheduled the sends across the next day, staggered, natural, almost random. 10 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon. Enough time for each person to react. Enough delay that it didn't look coordinated. When I clicked schedule, something inside me settled. Not joy, not rage, just a clean line between before and after. My phone buzzed again. Sienna. I answered because silence makes people reckless. Where are you? She snapped. At work. I called. They said you weren't there. Doctor's appointment. What kind? The kind that's none of your business. A pause, sharp enough to cut. We need to talk tonight, she said. Sure, I replied. We'll talk. I hung up and looked at Jonah. Phase 2 is at home, I said. I'll give her one chance to tell the truth. Jonah gave me a flat look. You think she will? No, I said, but I want to hear the lie. I want it recorded in my head exactly as she says it. Jonah nodded slowly. Tomorrow her office lights up. Tomorrow, I said, the pieces start falling. Outside, rain began tapping the windows, steady and patient, like consequences arriving right on schedule. I woke up on Jonah's couch before sunrise, the room still dark and quiet. My phone was already angry in my hand. Missed calls stacked like a tower. 7 from Sienna, 3 unknown numbers, 1 text that didn't try to sound sweet. Call me now. I didn't. Instead, I opened the anonymous accounts. All 5 emails were delivered. All 5 were opened, and the replies were already coming in. Marissa in HR forwarded the audio straight up the chain with a note about professional boundaries. No opinion, just procedure. That's how real trouble starts. Tanya in accounting replied that she was reviewing travel and entertainment expenses. Short, blunt, efficient. I pictured her highlighting the same lines I've been staring at for months. Owen in IT didn't write back. Silence from a man like that is a door clicking shut somewhere. Nora in marketing shared it to coworkers with a line about promotions not being what people think. That kind of message grows legs fast. Caleb in legal thanked me and said it was being handled internally. Translation: meetings were already happening behind closed doors. Jonah sipped his coffee and looked at me over the rim. You started something. No, I said. They started it. I just made sure their own people saw it. I drove downtown just after 9. Sienna's building rose out of the city like a monument to a world that never gets its hands dirty. Glass, steel, quiet floors, security that watches you like you're a liability. Today I didn't feel like a liability. I felt like the answer to a question they didn't want asked. I took the elevator to the 15th floor. Lucas Rayner's assistant, a young guy named Brandon, stepped in front of me halfway down the hall. Sir, Mr. Rayner is in a meeting. I'll wait, I said. Sir, you can't. Brandon, I cut in gently. I'm Nate Wilder, Sienna's husband. I think he'll want to see me. Brandon went pale, disappeared into the office, and came back seconds later looking shaken. He'll see you now. Lucas's corner office was exactly what I expected. Giant desk, expensive art, windows that made the city look small. Lucas himself looked less polished than last night. Tie loose, eyes tight, calm slipping at the edges. Nate, he said, this is unexpected. Is it? I sat without asking. Because you've known this was coming. His jaw flexed. I don't know what you think you know. I know enough, I said. 8 months. Promises tied to travel. Charges that don't belong on expense reports. A relationship that crossed every line your company pretends matters. You try to recover with a cool voice. Sienna is a valuable employee. Any promotion is based on merit. Merit, I repeated, pulling out a single screenshot. Then explain this. The things I'm doing for this promotion better be worth it. A crack ran through his composure. Just one, but it was there. This is extortion, he said. No, I replied. Extortion is asking for something in exchange for silence. I'm not asking for anything, and I'm not staying silent. My phone buzzed. Sienna again. Where are you? Please. I angled the screen so he could see. She's nervous, I said. You should be too. I stood. Board members are already asking questions. HR is looking at boundaries. Accounting is digging. Legal is awake. That's not revenge. That's your world reacting to what you did inside it. I left him sitting there, smaller than his office. On the 12th floor, I found Sienna's cubicle. She wasn't there. Her computer was logged in. Careless. I forwarded a few key emails to myself. Messages with her lawyer, asset breakdowns, timelines. 5 minutes. Nothing dramatic. Just protection. Then I heard my name. Nate. She was behind me, pale, shaking, trying to look steady, and failing. What are you doing here? She whispered. Visiting, I said. Seeing where you've been living. You can't be here. People are staring. I looked around. Half the floor was pretending not to watch. Interesting, I said quietly. You wanted privacy now. Please, she said. Not here. I held her eyes. You made me a joke in public. You build a plan in secret. Now you get to feel what that looks like from the other side. Her mouth opened. No sound came out. Go back to work, I said. Pretend everything is normal while people start connecting the dots. Sit in meetings and wonder who knows. Walk past HR and feel your stomach drop. I stepped around her. This is what consequences feel like, I said as I walked away. Not loud, just unavoidable. Phase 3 was done, and the final act was already rolling toward them. 3 days passed in a strange kind of quiet. Not peaceful quiet, not healed quiet. The kind of quiet you get when people are holding their breath, waiting for the next headline. My phone stayed busy, but I let it ring. Every call from Sienna felt like a trap disguised as urgency. Every unknown number felt like the company trying to find the shape of the fire. Jonah didn't ask for updates. He didn't need to. The news came to us anyway, in fragments. By the second day, Sienna had been pulled into multiple meetings. Her badge stopped working for certain floors. She texted me once in the middle of the afternoon, just 2 words. What did you do? I didn't answer. On the third morning, just after 6, my phone rang with a number I knew without saving. Lucas Rayner. I picked up. Wilder, he said, voice tight and thin. We need to meet. Do we? I asked. The board is asking questions. HR is conducting interviews. Legal is reviewing every travel expense I've approved this year. He swallowed hard, like the words were gravel. This has gone far enough. Funny, I said. That's exactly how I felt at Bellini's. A pause. Meet me there, he said finally. 1 hour. Bellini's, I repeated. Bold choice. 1 hour, he said again. And come alone. He hung up before I could respond. I called Jonah anyway, told him where I was going. You sure? He asked. I'm sure it's time to finish what they started, I said. You want me in the parking lot? No, I replied. This one's mine. I arrived early and chose the same table in the center of the dining room, the same spot where Lucas had leaned back like the world owed him laughter. The waiter recognized me when I walked in. His practiced smile faltered for half a second, then returned like a mask snapped back into place. Coffee, he asked. Black, I said. Lucas showed up right on time. He looked like he'd been living on caffeine and fear. The suit was still expensive, but it hung on him differently. His face had new lines in it, the kind you earn fast when control slips away. You look tired, I said as he sat down. 3 days of meetings will do that, he replied. The waiter appeared, relieved there was no wine this time. Lucas waited until we were alone. I'll resign, he said, leaning forward. Effective immediately. Early retirement. I'll forfeit severance. I'll disappear from Sienna's life. He said it like a negotiation he'd rehearsed all night. In exchange for your silence, he added, I stir my coffee slowly, watching the dark swirl. What makes you think I want your resignation? I asked. He blinked. Because it's what any rational man would want. Justice. A clean ending. I looked up at him. Is that what you think you did? I asked. Give me justice by stepping into my marriage. His jaw tightened. The situation is not complicated. I cut in. You wanted something that wasn't yours. You used your position to blur boundaries. You signed off on expenses that didn't belong on corporate books. You treated the rules like they were for other people. His eyes darted away, then back. This is turning into a witch hunt, he said. No, I replied. This is a mirror. He opened his mouth, closed it. What do you want from me then? He asked. I leaned back in my chair. I want you to understand that consequences don't require my permission, I said. They just require the truth. Lucas rubbed a hand over his face like he could wipe the week away. And Sienna, he asked finally, what happens to her? I pulled out my phone and showed him a screenshot of an email I'd received that morning from one of my anonymous accounts. She's on administrative leave, I said. Promotion rescinded. Access revoked. His face went pale. She doesn't deserve this, he whispered. I held his gaze. Why? I asked softly. Should she escape what she helped build? She wasn't the one in power, he said. I was her supervisor. The responsibility is mine. How noble, I replied. The powerful man protecting the woman from the weather he invited. He flinched. Listen, he said, voice dropping. I care about her. Do you? I asked. Then why are you here making deals with me instead of standing beside her while the building shakes? His eyes lowered to the cup. He had no answer. I let the silence sit there a moment. Here's what happens, I said. You resign, not because I'm demanding it, but because the board is going to remove you anyway, and resignation makes it look cleaner on paper. He stared up. How do you know that? Because 3 board members received anonymous packages yesterday, I said. Documentation of your relationship, the expense trail, the policy violations. Enough to make their insurance carrier nervous. Enough to make auditors curious. Lucas's hands trembled around the cup. And if they look closely at those corporate statements, I went on, charging personal travel as business costs doesn't stay a private problem. It becomes a regulatory one. His cup clattered softly back onto the saucer. You're destroying my life, he said. No, I replied evenly. I'm revealing the life you already built. I'm just making sure nobody gets to pretend they didn't see it. My phone buzzed again. Sienna, please call me. We need to talk. I tilted the screen so Lucas could see it. Looks like she wants a negotiation too, I said. He swallowed. What will you tell her? The same thing I'm telling you, I replied. That the story doesn't bend around what you wanted. It bends around what you did. I stood, dropped the bill on the table, and picked up my jacket. Enjoy your coffee, I said. It might be the last quiet one you get for a while. Nate, he said behind me. I paused. Why go this far? His voice was smaller now. Why not just divorce her and move on? I looked back at him. Because moving on without consequences is how people like you keep existing, I said. It's how men with titles keep thinking everyone else is furniture. It's how someone like Sienna convinces herself that the people in her way don't count. His face tightened, but he didn't speak. This isn't just about her, I continued. Or you. It's about the version of me you both created in your heads. The soft target. The man who would swallow humiliation and call it love. I stepped toward the door. I'm not that man, I said. I walked out of Bellini's for the second time. But this time I wasn't leaving in shame. I was leaving in clarity. The air outside was cold and sharp. Downtown was waking up, headlights stitching the streets, people hurrying toward jobs they thought were stable. I stood by my truck for a moment, letting the morning settle. My phone rang. Sienna. I answered, because endings deserve to be spoken. Don't call me sweetheart, she said before I could speak. Her voice was raw and furious. Not after what you've done. What I've done, I repeated. You ruined everything, she said. My career, my reputation, my future. I leaned against the truck, staring at the restaurant window. Did I ruin it? I asked quietly, or did I just stop protecting a lie? You're vindictive, she hissed. Cruel. Is it cruel to let the truth land where it lands? I asked, or is it cruel to plan someone's demolition in silence while smiling at them over dinner? She went quiet. What happens now? She asked at last. Now you live inside the life you chose, I said. You rebuild from what's left, and you learn what it costs to underestimate somebody you thought you could manage. We could fix this, she said, small now. Counseling. A fresh start. I let the silence stretch. Which mistake did you fix? I asked. The affair? The plan? Or getting caught? She didn't answer. That's my answer too, I said. I ended the call. For a long minute, I stood there, listening to the city breathe. No fireworks. No shouting. No victory speech. Just a quiet certainty that I'd finally stopped living inside someone else's story. I got in my truck and drove toward the shop, toward whatever came next. And for the first time in 8 months, I felt like myself again. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, leave a comment below to share your thoughts on what happened. Take care.